So with that, we can actually get the show on the road. And this morning, I'm here to talk about player experience. And this is a term that's not really known outside of CCP, but we'll get to that in a little while. First, a little bit of an introduction. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name, obviously, CCP Falcon. I'm the Senior Community Manager for CCP Games. And you can find me here on Twitter, where I post cat pictures and a lot of garbage. There's been an excessive amount of garbage the last couple of days because I use Twitter when I'm inebriated sometimes and things get ugly. But outside of that, generally it's all Eve stuff, cats and fun times. So yeah, what is player experience? So we're a group and we only use this name inside of CCP really, but you guys will know the teams under different names. So the first team of 4 is customer support, the Game Masters. Their primary function is obviously being GMs and handling your tickets, but they also deal with events, project work, and meet and greet for new players as well. We have a second team, Team Security, and these guys are generally the spiky guys that you'll come into contact with. They deal with anti-bot and anti-RMT, account security, and as well information security for CCP as a company. Then we have our team, the community team. So we deal with community communication, events and gatherings, CSM, and all of our influencers as well. So our streamers, our fan sites, that kind of thing. And then we've got the last team, internal affairs, auditing background checks on ISD and CSM members. They also handle investigation of anything that needs, and they're also the big meanies who tell us what we can and we can't do. So first, let's take a look at customer support and what they do. So their primary role is as Game Masters. So they'll be the guys who you're interacting with, who are answering your tickets, taking care of responses, reimbursing ships, that kind of thing. And these guys have a target that 80% of their tickets receive a first reply within 24 business hours. And our tickets are segregated into a few different queues. So we've got technical, gameplay, billing, account security, stuck, reimbursement. Then there's a few other categories as well that are super specific for different issues. Sometimes we have queues that crop up as well during expansion time for very specific things. So some of these more complicated tickets were a little bit longer for a reply because they need a specialist GM, but most of the time, 80% of tickets usually get a reply within 20 business hours, so we're usually good. So for instance, a ticket with an agent mission, something super simple like a password reset request, that kind of stuff, that's generally handled in about an hour or two. But tickets relating to more intricate stuff that some of you guys will have come into contact as veterans, like factional warfare issues or issues with POS, which will hopefully be a thing of the past soon. Structure problems or really high-profile reimbursements, that kind of stuff, that'll all be handled by your senior GM. So in terms of response times from our customer support team, let's have a look at the last year. So this is a graph showing the last year from June to June, 2018 to 2019. And this shows our response times to tickets in terms of a percentage of how many tickets got a reply within our SLA. So generally, response times are pretty fast, and most issues get resolved relatively quickly. But there's obviously slows down during the times when there's high ticket load. So if we compare this to ticket creation rates, you can see a few spikes here and there. But the slowdown in response lines up with where there's big spikes, where there's a lot of traffic and a lot for the GM team to do. You can also see as well that the vast majority of the spikes don't really occur around expansions, around major releases, that kind of stuff, with the exception of the March release there. Generally, the big increases in ticket volume are focused around stuff like SSO issues, login issues, server issues, that kind of thing, where things go south that we haven't predicted would happen, and you guys are like, holy shit, I need a ship reimbursed, or I can't log into the game, or something else that's similar. So why is this? Well, while our Game Masters spend a lot of time working with you guys directly on your tickets, they also do a lot of proactive support as well. So they're always thinking behind the scenes, what can we do to make things smoother, to make things faster, to make sure that you guys get the best service level possible. So they do a lot of proactive support. One of the biggest things they do is our Game Masters actually have liaisons with our feature teams. So when you hear about like Team 5 or Team Genesis, the little cells that work on individual features within Eve, each one of those teams has a GM assigned to them. So this gives them direct communication with Eve development and a really, really close relationship with the quality assurance on that team as well. So hopefully they can look at what bugs might come up, what issues might come up, what might confuse players, cause them to file support tickets, that kind of thing. And it also gives the GM team a solid idea of potential issues that might crop up because they can just talk directly with the devs. So GM liaisons are also there for another reason as well. And they're able to talk to the development team, the QA team, the technical teams behind the features that you guys play, and they're able to say, well, this would really help us if we could get logging for this or logging for that, if we could look behind the scenes or under the hood of this feature so that we can grab data to be able to help people. And this makes it easier for the GM team to support you guys once a feature is introduced, because it lets them sort of like, if you have a problem, for instance, you lose a ship to something, they can look behind the scenes under the hood and they can see what actually happened. So they get a really, really solid idea of potential issues. It lets them look at all the potential pitfalls for a feature. And with the logs, of course, it means that the logs actually show something. This is a meme that senior GM Lalage hates a lot, or lead GM rather, sorry. So I put this in just for him. So this isn't the only form of proactive support that we do as well. Another avenue for proactive support the GM teams handles is analyzing reasons for subscription cancellations as well. So when you guys will know, well, some of you hopefully won't know, when an Omega pilot chooses to end their subscription, they can put in a reason like, the game sucks, I hate CCP Falcon, I don't like what you're doing with the game, someone called me a mean name in local, whatever. So they're given the option to leave feedback. And the game masters look at this feedback and they've got a couple of courses of action they can take. The first, they collate and deliver cancellation feedback. So they'll segregate the feedback, they'll break it down into categories, and they'll send it to individual teams. So individual teams can look at why people are canceling their accounts, why they're unhappy with the game, what issues they've had, and sort of try and resolve things for them. And right now, efforts are actually ongoing to update our cancellation reasons, so they're more granular, people can see better what they can choose, and hopefully we'll be able to make sure that we can reach out to people and bring them back to the game. And in terms of reaching out to people, one of the biggest things that our GM team actually do is they reach out to cancellations for tech issues. So if someone has a problem with the game and they decide, I'm just going to leave, this is too complicated, there's too much going on, then we'll actually proactively reach out to people with a support ticket, just create a support ticket for them, it bounces to their email address, and we're like, hey, we see you had a problem downloading the game, installing, or you've been having a lot of blue screens, client crashes. Can you send us a DXDIA? Can you send us a lot of information? And we'll see what we can do about helping you get back into the game. And that actually works quite a bit. It's something that we really pride ourselves on, is being able to help people technically and make sure that we can actually just assist people to get back into the game and fly in again. So it's definitely a good thing. And then, of course, we do a lot of proactive rookie support as well. The GM team, we actually have a dedicated group inside the GM team who do meet and greets. And this is basically, it involves contacting players who are fresh to the game, they're not an alt account, well, usually not an alt account, and assisting them through the first steps and tackling the huge, terrible learning curve that EVE is. You've all seen the image, you all know what it's like for a rookie trying to get into the game, and it can be really tough sometimes. So we give them a quick 15-minute conversation, point them in the right direction, give them some information, and send them on their way, hopefully, to a bright and a long future with EVE. So as an established player, if you ever receive one of these conversations, you probably recognize them straight away. It's a guy with red text, GM in front of his name, and he's like, hey, how are you doing? And most of the time, if an established player mistakenly gets one of these conversations, it's like, I already know the ropes, guys, it's okay. Move on down the line to the next rookie who needs your help. However, rookies tend not to recognize people, and we get some great questions. The first one, obviously, is, oh my God, is this a scam? Are you trying to rip me off? Yeah, these guys go a long way in EVE. The second is, are you a bot? Why is your text a different color? And then sometimes these questions occur in space. So these guys have undocked, they're doing their first little mining in their adorable little their Corvette. And all of a sudden they panic and they look around them and like, oh my God, are you going to pod me? What's happening? You're all red, it's not good. So rookies tend to be pretty adorable, they tend to be pretty lovely, and it's always nice to see them doing well. So if you see a rookie in need, they can be really confused when we contact them, so be sure to help them out as much as you can. And I know the EVE community is already great at this, you guys are fantastic. So one of the things I do want to stress at this part of the presentation is I've seen a couple of people who are in New Friendly Corps here. we've heard a lot from CCP Berger in the keynote as well about sort of us trying to focus on the first steps that players take in the game, introducing players to the game, because they're very much the lifeblood of what we do. So if you run a new friendly player corporation, be sure to keep a corp advertisement up to date in game, because we actually send new players there. We say, go and look at this tool, go and have a look. Search for what you want to do in the game, and any corporation that's tagged as new player friendly will help you out. So if you do run a new player friendly corp, make sure that you're up to date and you're tagged as new player friendly inside the game, and hopefully you'll have a big nice flood of rookies coming towards you. And of course, give our rookie pilots all the support you can to try and get them on their way, because they're a wonderful group, and they're definitely, absolutely the lifeblood of EVE. So I love this image. I put this image in. There's several explosions in this presentation, by the way. So one of the defining moments, which is often make or break for a new player, that our customer support team have found, is their first ship loss. I mean, everyone remembers their first ship loss, right? I mean, everyone in this room can remember it, yeah? Everyone's now got a kill mail or a stupid thing that they did coming into their head, or some problem that they had, some issue that they had, or just something they didn't understand. I mean, I certainly remember my first ship loss. Thankfully, I got revenge for it, so I don't feel so bad about it now, 17 years later. But, EVE players tend to hold a grudge, and everyone tends to remember their first loss. But their first loss is usually a deciding factor in their first steps in the game as to whether they'll stick around. And it's all about context. The context of their first ship loss is whether someone is going to learn from it and go on to become a big, bold capsuleer and do something great, or whether they're going to go, this is it for me, I've had enough, I'm going to go back to playing whatever game I was before. It's one of the strongest indicators of someone's initial path forward in EVE. So it's something that we want to focus on a lot. It's incredibly important for new players to understand why they lost a ship. Not how, not when, not where, but why. What they did wrong, or what happened to cause them to experience that loss. And as well, more importantly, how they can avoid it in the future, or minimize the risk of it in future in most cases. So rookies, we found through a lot of data that we have, who have a support network of a player corporation, guys who are in Brave, EVE Uni, Test, that kind of stuff, or Karma Fleet. I know there's a few from each here at EVE North. The guys who are in a corporation that give them support generally tend to take it on the chin, and they're like, no problem at all. They've got SRP, or they've got someone who can explain what happened or why they fitted their ship so shitly. And they can actually work through it, understand where they messed up, and they can make a step forward. But it's pilots who haven't found a wingman yet that it's troubling for. They don't have the context for why they lost the ship. It can be demoralizing, and it can also sometimes be super confusing as well, because we all know that EVE is, it's very much it's a complicated game. There's a lot of things you can do and not do in it, so you've got to be very careful. So when the dust settles from your first loss, there's obviously a lot of emotion, and rookies who haven't yet grasped the sandbox nature of EVE are sometimes asking questions. Was this my fault? Was this someone else's fault? So the GM team generally tend to be more lenient with the rookie pilots when it comes to ship reimbursements, especially the first loss. If we can give a complimentary reimbursement, or we can give some pointers or whatever, if they file a support ticket, then you'll find a GM will be trying to help people out as much as they can. So right now, the GM team are developing a program that would expand the meet and greet conversations that we have. And that would cover the first ship loss too. So it's almost like, clip it in Microsoft Word if you're old enough to remember this, where you lose a ship, and straight away there's a little bit of a pop-up from a GM that's like, I see you lost a ship. Would you like to know why? So this is kind of what we're aiming for. We're aiming to look at the nature of the ship loss, how it's happened, why it's happened, and where we can, guide a rookie through that sort of roller coaster of emotions that occurs when you lose your first hull, and give them a little bit more context, a little bit more information for why it happened, how it happened, and where it happened. Because we find that a lot of players are just like, oh, this is pretty space, and they jump through a gate into low sec. All of a sudden, there's a big group of mean people on the other side, and they're like, I'm in a station now. Did I level up? This is wonderful. So this happens a lot. You would not believe it. And it's just about having context, right? Because EVE is very much a different game to most other MMOs out there. So the idea is to educate a new player about the mistake, or just the circumstances. It might not have been a mistake. It might just have been, someone gets suicide ganked, they were doing nothing wrong, that kind of thing. So it's just about giving people more information, giving people more context about why they lost their first ship, rather than the game outright just punishing them for having done something dumb or being in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's all about context. So we've all had that oh shit moment, right? Where you just, the structure warning goes off, mom's spaghetti, all that shit, where you're just like, oh, what have I done? No, this was a terrible mistake. I've been attending Play Gathering since 2003. I've been playing EVE Online for going on 17 years, and losing a ship for me still hurts. But now it's less about the ISK and more about the ego hit, especially if I lose a ship to someone who's like 10 years younger than me, and I'm just like, oh my God, what have I done? But I'm lucky, I'm not like you guys, as in I get to be anonymous. So as a developer, you guys know me as CCP Falcon, but no one knows my actual character name. So if I do dumb shit, it appears on Reddit, and I just get to go, wow, this guy's really dumb, why would he do that? So I get to troll myself. This has actually happened once before, where I trolled myself on Reddit, just like no one's finding out this was me ever. So it's a nice thing to have happen. And I'm still very, very ashamed of that lost mail to this day. So yeah, I mean, we have the benefit of anonymity, but obviously, when players lose a ship in game, it can be embarrassing, it can be unfortunate, and be terrible. So I want to talk a little bit about reimbursements too. So unsurprisingly, reimbursement investigations make up quite a bit of support work. But it's maybe not as much as you think. The majority of ship losses, all the way up to freighters, can be handled by any GM on the team. It's when you come to stuff like Titans, supercarriers, if you come to Alliance tournament ships, limited edition hulls, stuff like that, or things that were really expensively fitted, that's generally when a senior GM will take over with a little bit more experience in EVE and will work to make sure that either the ship gets reimbursed or a player is given good context as to why not. So let's look at reimbursements by ship type. Yeah. I expected a little bit of a giggle on this one. So some of you might be surprised at the type of ships that are reimbursed, others less so. Typically, the GMs find that the most expensive ships and fittings are the most likely to be requested for reimbursement by pilots. And this tends to be true regardless of whether someone's lost it legitimately and they've just done something really, really ass stupid, or if they've lost it through a gameplay issue or something that's gone wrong. So, yeah, any trained eye can also see that the most commonly used ships, especially for usually PvE, tend to be the more heavily requested for reimbursement. So these are, the Healer, the Navy issue Vexter, the Tengu, and the Rattlesnake generally tend to be up there quite a bit. So let's look at reimbursement by location. And there's also a very similar picture here too. So, yeah, Jeed is obviously high on the list, given opportunistic pilots and the sheer amount of wars in the game as well, right? Because it's a high traffic system. But it does warm my terrible old shriveled pirate heart to see Tama second on the list there. It's beautiful. Really like to see that. And it's, so it paints a very, very clear picture. But let's now look at reimbursement in raw numbers as well, in terms of the months from June 2018 to June 2019. So if we take a look, you can see just how many reimbursements are issued. The average is around 700 to 800 a month, or about 25 reimbursements per day, usually, which is a remarkably low number. And remember, these are only the ships that were reimbursed. This doesn't count reimbursement tickets where we said, nope, you were dumb, you did something wrong, we can't reimburse your ship. So there's a clear anomaly here, though. Like that was an interesting month this year. And some of you might be wondering what the hell was going on. Any of you who actually played the Guardians Gala right after downtime will know what happened. Some of you might still be in counseling for the NPC that you ran into. So we had a slight problem. So unfortunately for us, there was a misplaced decimal place that we didn't find out. And when the event went live, one of our NPCs was firing it at 10 times the speed that he should have been doing, which I think resulted in about 30,000 DPS, which surprised a few people, let's say that. So a little bit of a tidbit of information for you guys. In the 1 hour and 43 minutes that this was bugged before it was hotfixed, it claims 783 kill meals. Just for reference, that's about 7 per minute. So a lot of people died. Several people died multiple times for some reason. All right, I mustn't have turned my hardeners on. It'll be fine. I'll go back in. Whatever. So, needless to say, quite a few people who encountered said Angel Cartel pilot were somewhat confused. Thankfully, CCP Larrikin, data genius of our hearts, former game designer who now works on the monthly economic report and all kinds of stuff like that, he was able to gather a full list of all the pilots affected. And we actually tried something different for once. The customer support team tried a proactive reimbursement approach for the first time. And this involved just blanket reimbursing all of the ships that were lost to this NPC because, I mean, clearly we fucked up, like 30,000 DPS. You're not going to tank it, you know what I mean? So this involved reimbursing all the ships that were lost and contacting the players affected to let them know. And of course, this made people happy. People were like, oh wow, you just gave me my ship back and I didn't even need to file a ticket. This is great. So this of course seemed to make people happy. And while this is a solid approach for specific issues where we can identify people, it is a lot of manual work. In instances of a few hundred pilots being effective, then obviously we can do this, but when it comes to thousands or tens of thousands, it will be a hell of a lot more work. So I actually wanted to ask you guys in the room right now, what do you think of this kind of approach? If something happens like that, yeah, do you think it's good? I think that is a clear indicator that we done good, which is nice. So of course, for much larger issues, this isn't really practical. I mean, if we go to manually reimburse 10,000 people, we're going to get GMs off work with carpal tunnel syndrome and all kinds of problems. So we've got to be...
Just to give everybody the same kind of firepower?
No. I mean, I've never been so direct in responding to a question in my life, no. You guys are bad enough with the equipment you have now, give you 30,000 DPS and I'm just going home. Like, I'm not dealing with it. Yeah, this is true, this is true. I mean, that would be pretty cool, wouldn't it? Like, well, the art presentation's on after this, so maybe you can talk to the art guys. Just gonna throw that ball over there somewhere. So whenever possible, the GM team will reimburse a ship when we can. Especially if it's, well, always if it's a loss to a legitimate issue. Typically, these issues are known server issues, a known bug, or something bizarre that can't really explain why a loss has happened. This genuinely happens from time to time where someone will submit a reimbursement request and it's just like, what the fuck happened here? And our GMs are looking through the logs and they're just like, yeah, we've got no idea what happened. And then there'll just be a clear reimbursement. But of course, some of you guys will have seen this, and there are obviously times when we can't reimburse. These include like any third-party networking issues and of course issues with your hardware or your connection that aren't directly related to TQ. And then, of course, the most unpopular policy that we have, the fact that we simply can't provide reimbursements for some things, such as large fleet fights. So the reason that we actually do this, and we explain this to people quite in detail when they put in a support ticket, is we always want to maintain a level playing field, right? We always want to make sure that when a fleet fight happens, it goes down the way that the players have let it happen, basically. Yes, sometimes a node death can happen. There can be, you know, a mass disconnect, that kind of stuff. But given how high level, how crazy, and how meta the politics are in EVE, we generally tend to stay away from reimbursing fleet fights purely because of the fact that it puts us in a position where we could potentially affect a political outcome. We could cause the collapse of an alliance. We could cause someone to get ahead in a war, something like that. So we always use the phrase, the simulation is as is given, basically. So if you do experience connectivity issues, problems, that kind of stuff, you should always check in a couple of places when you submit a reimbursement request, or before you submit a reimbursement request, rather. With our new launcher, which works way better than our old launcher, thankfully, we now have this wonderful new ribbon. And we put this up basically every time there is actually an official problem with our server system or with TQ, with its associated services. So this is turned on by us guys in the community team when the shit hits the fan, and we make sure that it links different places and gives you all the information that you need. So this will give you details of what kind of issues are ongoing. If it's not lit up, then we consider tranquility to be 5 by 5, everything's good, and any issues that happen are an unfortunate result of the nature of the internet. And the second one is the wonderful EVE status Twitter account, which I have actually got connected to my phone at all times in case the shit hits the fan. So what we try and do is give immediate notification that there's a problem with TQ, that we're working on it, and usually this will link to like a forum thread, it'll link to some resource that gives you more information of what's happening, how the server's broken, what issue is occurring, and what we're doing to resolve it. And usually what we try and do is we try and give an update in a forum thread or via Twitter at least every 15 minutes so you guys know exactly what's happening. And we always want to maintain really, really good lines of communication with you guys. I mean, that's what events like this are all about. That's what us being present on Twitter, on Discord, on Reddit is all about. And we always want to make sure that you guys have got all the information you have at your hands, especially when it comes to TQ. So on communication, let's look at pilot satisfaction. The GM team always prides itself on maintaining good contact with the community and a high satisfaction rating. And unfortunately, the nature of complaining is that if guys have a really, really good experience, it's usually like, this is great, I'll move on with my life and I'll do other things. But when a bad experience happens, people are more eager to talk about it. So these numbers actually might be surprising to you guys, given some of the flack that our GM team gets from time to time, and our community team too. So when a player's ticket is closed, they receive a survey asking them if they're satisfied with the service or not. And using this, I cannot stress to everyone in the room and everyone watching on stream, is super important when you've interacted with the GM team, because it helps us improve the service that you guys get. If you rate good, we're like, we done good, let's crack open the beers, that's fantastic. But if we get rated bad, then we can occasionally review the service level that we're providing, figure out why it was rated bad, what happened, what went wrong, and what we can do to fix things. So the aim, of course, is to keep the rating as high as possible so that satisfaction is at its best. And to do this, the GM team will periodically review tickets that have been rated with bad satisfaction, and they'll look at why, look at what happened, look at responses that the GM gave, look at whether that GM might need more training, didn't understand the context of a ticket, or if the player's just really angry that they didn't get their Vex and Navy issue reimbursed. Because that does happen as well, where someone's lost a ship for a completely legitimate reason, they don't get a reimbursement, and then it's like, bad, I'm not satisfied. And people are obviously perfect within their rights to do that, but we generally try and segregate those tickets out from the guys who've either haven't been given an acceptable level of service, or the new GM's been confused or something like that and got crossed wires. So it's super important that you submit a ticket, you use this once your request's complete, because that just helps us nail our service levels and make sure that we provide the best possible service that we can to you guys. Outside of this, the GM team do a hell of a lot of project work as well, and there's one thing to always remember about our game masters. They are everywhere. I'm not kidding. It's scary the amount of stuff that they do at CCP. So while support tickets are their primary role, they're heavily involved in a multitude of roles at CCP. So these include tournament assistance, exploit investigation, social media assistance too. They're involved heavily in playtesting of new features before they go out, and they're involved in event assistance as well. Our GMs are some of the most dedicated, flexible, and insanely hard-working people at CCP. They're always willing to help out, and they're always willing to pitch in. And 9 times out of 10, events like FanFest, events like this here at Eve North, are built on the shoulders and the backbones of the guys in the GM team doing an incredible amount of work. We've got people who staff the PvP tournament for 8 hours at a time. We've got guys who are at FanFest on their feet for 12 hours a day. We fly them all over the place to assist with events for us. And it's absolutely fantastic to work with these guys all the time. So, while support tickets are their primary role, they also get involved in event stuff, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit now. So some of you might remember recent events in Jita during May that caused a little bit of tie-dye, and of course last year in July as well. Do you guys enjoy yourselves? So this was when Concord took care of a few dirty botters, teleported them to HiSec, and had a little bit of fun with them. And I'm showing images like this because I just really like watching people who break the rules and screw with our game explode and lose all their stuff. It's really fun. It's one of the things that really, really warms my heart. So events like this are organized by player experience, primarily the Game Masters. The Game Masters do a hell of a lot of work to sort of get these events together, get the right list of accounts and characters, and then get them ready for you guys to blow up. So with a little assistance from the community team and of course team security as well to verify who they're teleporting and what they're doing, the GM team primarily organize this stuff. There's many and varied ways that the GM team love to interact with you guys. And it's everything from this kind of event through to coming along to player gatherings, to being involved in FanFest, and stuff like GM Week. I mean, I don't know any of you guys take part in GM Week last year when we had a load of Twitch streaming going on. We had the first Whackabot event where we invaded you live for a little while. So coming along and being part of this event is great for the GM team, and they absolutely love it. So on the subject of the bottom side of things, both the GM team and the community team work super closely with our security team as well, primarily on account security related issues, bot and RMT, that kind of thing. And I wanted to talk a little bit about account security too. So tickets relating to account security are by far the most complex that we get. As many pilots are aware, waiting times are incredibly long if you've got a hacked account. And I'm going to get into why in a little while.
Because you don't want to help someone break into another person's account.
This is true. That's one very good reason. Hacked accounts, they take many man-hours to fix. It's a lot of work for a GM. And it's incredibly important to keep your account protected so that this doesn't happen to you. And of course, one of the primary reasons that account hacking occurs is because of people buying ISK. So, as always, a PSA, make sure that you don't do so. It's important to understand that in most instances, the issues with a hacked account don't relate to a hacked EVE Online account. 9 times out of 10, it's far more common for access to be gained to an EVE account through a hacked email. Keeping your email accounts protected is absolutely paramount. I mean, I've had one hacked email account in my life, and it was a total nightmare to deal with. Thankfully, no one got to my EVE accounts, just my bank and a few other things which don't matter. But it's one of those things that's terrifying and one of those things that can cause a really, really big problem. And we also end up with a lot of account sharing issues too as well, where people take things from each other because they think they're friends with each other. They get access to each other's accounts, and all of a sudden a Titan and 200 billion ISK goes missing, and you're like, well, that wasn't very nice, was it? So you've got to be really, really careful. And we obviously always recommend that you don't share your account details with people. So a few pointers for securing your account. Don't reuse passwords in your email accounts. Make sure you're using two-factor on your email accounts. Use EVE Online's two-factor authentication as well. It was recently updated. This might have passed some of you by, but you can actually now use one token for all of your accounts. So if you're a crazy lunatic who has 20, 50, 100 EVE Online accounts, you can use one two-factor key now for all of them. Make sure your passwords on all your accounts are strong as well. Two-factor is great, but don't be using QWERTY 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or one of our GMs will actually fly to you and slap you around the face for being so dumb. And also, check this website, haveibepwned.com, to see if your passwords are out there, because this is a big repository that our security team use all the time of basically email addresses and passwords that have been exposed and compromised when a site has been hacked somewhere. And they've got a huge database that lets people search their own email address and see if any of their passwords are exposed. So be vigilant and know what's going on. And what you need to do as well is you need to fully understand the context of how much effort it takes to fix a hacked account. Imagine all of the ways that one player can transfer ISK, assets, items, implants, all that kind of stuff between each other. The number of man hours put into fixing damage done is absolutely insane, and it's one of the things we're trying to reduce as much as we possibly can. So we've started to actually take a look at ways that we can help proactively prevent this, rather than dealing with the damage and the after effects. It's a really, really sad thing to see when this does happen. So it's imperative that you remember that hackers have nothing to lose. You've got thousands of hours of gameplay. I look at the back end of TQ and I look at my history with EVE and how many man hours I've put into EVE, and sometimes it makes me cry. Partially from happiness and partially from, oh my God, what have I been doing with my life? Because there's thousands of hours in there. In some instances, you guys have been building characters for 16, 17 years, and that can be gone like that in a blink of an eye if you don't make sure that you're secure. The reality is, as long as there's a market for dirty ISK, these scumbags are going to continue to try and take your accounts. We've even had, it's insane, but we've even had hackers who have access to email accounts, hack an account, destroy it, rip all the ISK and assets off it. One of our GMs spends 15 man hours trying to put the account back together. Then the hacker poses as the real owner of the account, gets access to the account again, and sells all the stuff again. This is how savage these guys are. They don't give a fuck about any of you. They just don't care about you. They don't care about the stuff they're selling, the people they're selling stuff to. All they want is your money. And you're a victim, whether you're buying ISK from them or whether you're having your stuff stolen to pay for their stuff. So just help us help you by making sure you keep your hard-earned ISK, your assets, and more importantly, your character safe. Because there's nothing worse than logging in one day and finding out you've got 3 skill points. Like, this is the worst thing in the world. So when we're talking about security, let's talk about team security. Security work heavily with the game masters and account security, but they spend the majority of their time elsewhere. They do work in account security, but they're really focused on anti-real money trading efforts, anti-botting efforts, information security, and of course, more recently in the EU, GDPR compliance as well. And of course, infernal repairs too. These guys are a wonderful group of people that I'm absolutely terrified of. So before we dive into looking at actual security, I just want to take a quick look at internal affairs, because not a lot of people know what they do. They just think of the police version of internal affairs, I guess, that you see in all those like old cop movies. And they do actually do quite a bit of work. So they do developer account auditing. They deal with developer player account auditing as well, making sure that we are playing by the rules and that we're respecting the rules and we're respecting the sandbox. They do ISD and CSM background checks for us as well to make sure we're not letting crazy people onto the CSM or into ISD. I mean, we fucked up there, haven't we, to be honest, if that's the case. So they also do ISD and CSM auditing where required, if needed, looking over people's accounts, making sure that they're not using insider information, that kind of stuff. And of course, they do developer misconduct investigation as well. And I will tell you, like, it's probably 2 or 3 times a week that someone emails internal affairs and says that I'm a terribly biased person who's a goon, or I'm in PL, or I'm in Northern Coalition, or I'm a Chinese botter, or whatever. This happens all the time. So some of our devs are perpetually on the receiving end of, this guy's biased, you should fire him. So our internal affairs team are constantly busy, but of course, most of the work they do, we can't talk about, unfortunately. But we do want to take a look at security, and I want to take a look over the last year. So we do a quarterly security update, and we give a little bit of information. I want to give you, for context, what's happened over the course of the last year. So we've had 9,502 accounts banned for account hacking. We've had 20,643 accounts banned for botting-related activities, and 14,678 accounts banned for RMT-related activities. So the security team they're taking a hatchet to things, definitely. But the reality is, as I've said before, that so long as there's a market for real money trading, this war is always going to continue. These numbers are just a part of the story, but they're a clear reminder of how real the threat is to your characters and assets. EVE is a pretty unique game in a sense that its pilots are incredibly wealthy in terms of virtual goods value. And your hard-earned characters and assets are a prime target for those who want to make money. This is just a plain fact. But we will, however, make sure that we try and fight as hard as we can to make this behavior as hard as possible and try and stamp it out as best we can, because it's something that we hate to see. And I do want to try looking at some recent actions that we've taken. Obviously, this was popular to some, not popular to some, and this was putting level 4 and 5 missions back behind the need for an Omega subscription so that they weren't easily bottable and weren't easily exploitable. Then we've had changes to 2-factor authentication for multiple accounts, so you can obviously now use one key, as I said earlier. We've had the shutdown of several large in-game RMT and botting rings recently as well, which is a really big win for the security team. And we also have a combination of our security team and our business development team targeting social media groups that have been formed for RMT. So there are countless groups on Facebook, on VK, on various other social media sites that are basically just dedicated to RMT. And we're trying to stamp those out as hard as we possibly can. And we've had great support from Facebook, great support from VK as well, to try and help us take these guys down. And we're also doing the same thing with eBay as well. We're working very closely with those guys to take all the illegitimate listings down, which works really nicely for us. And of course, one of the biggest things we want to do as well is work on a bot report and feedback. So right now, we're working on actually looking at how we can give you feedback when you report someone for botting, whether that be, hey, we've received your report, great, or we received your report on this date and now action's been taken. We can't discuss it, but it's done and dusted. This is one of the biggest things that you guys have asked for, is just some feedback to know that we're actually doing things. And that's one of the primary things that we want to give you. So all these activities are part of Team Security's collaborations with teams all over CCP. I mean, they're involved with everything from Hilmar and our executive management to us guys who are on the ground and the community team who are publishing information for them and giving presentations like this. And they continue to work tirelessly in ensuring that as much can be done as humanly possible to make sure that your accounts stay safe. And you can also help by doing your part too. So, as I've said, keep your EVE and email accounts secure. Use 2-factor authentication. We can't stress this enough. report button on RMT, both in and out of game. If you see a group on Facebook, if you see someone tweeting stuff, just email security, because every lead is solid and we will investigate every single one of them. Don't account share. I know that a lot of people do this. The primary reason we say don't account share is because if you account share and you get hacked, we won't help you because you've broken our EULA. Like, that is the simple thing. If you lose all your stuff because you've account shared, it's on you. Keep your account secure. And of course, don't feed the problem by buying ISK. Not only are you going to get banned, but you're putting yourself in a position where you can victimize someone else who gets the stuff that's been sold from your account. So, in terms of communication, as always, we want to keep you guys up to date with what's going on with our security efforts. So far, we've been releasing a blog every quarter, like this one here. Then over the course of the summer, we're going to start to change the cadence of these reports, and they're going to come monthly. We want to be super direct with you guys about what we're doing, how we're doing it, and what information we give you. We want to try and give you a little bit more data than we're giving you now, and we also want to make sure that these are going to come more regularly. So we're actually going to put them out roughly around the same time as the monthly economic report each month, so you guys can not only see how the economy is going, you can also see what we're doing in this fight against bots and RMT. So these security reports are a collaboration between security and the community team as well, and we want to make sure that we give you as much information as is humanly possible. So speaking about community, we come to the fun part of the presentation. And we talk a little bit about the community team. And the other handsome gentleman, my partner in crime, CCP Dopamine, has just walked in over there, which is perfect timing, because now I'm going to talk a little bit about community. So I want to give an introduction to the two of us first. Obviously, CCP Falcon, Senior Community Manager, CCP Dopamine, Community Developer, and also our CSM Coordinator as well. The two of us report directly to the Director of Player Experience, and we're a team of two, which is a really small team, but I can't stress enough that we get support from all over the company. It's incredible how many people pitch in to help us out. So what do we cover and what do we do? The first thing that we handle, obviously, is communication. News, dev blogs, patch notes, feedback threads for releases and expansions, downtime messaging, and obviously emergency messaging when TQ has a heart attack and the shit hits the fan. We deal with community sentiment as well. So we monitor, we report, and we collate feedback as well. So if someone's shit posting on Reddit, or there's a thread on the EVE Online forums, or we see something on Twitter, Facebook, wherever, then we're always in a position where we're keeping our finger on the pulse and making sure that we're delivering feedback to development teams, and that we're making sure that your concerns are relayed. CCP Dopamine over here as well also deals with the CSM. So the elections, the management of the CSM day-to-day, their interaction with the dev team, and summits too. And then, of course, we're involved with events. We're involved with tournaments, program direction for events like this one, FanFest Vegas. We deal with content direction as well for these events, and we deal with being on stage like this, hosting and presenting, and the streaming side of things too, in collaboration with our friends over at Streamfleet. And then, of course, we deal with our influencers, our streamers, our fan sites, the EVE media, and we deal with direct engagement as well. So you'll see us very active on Reddit, the forums, Discord, Twitter, and Facebook. And of course, the fun part and the beautiful perk is we get to do all of this cool shit as well. So it's a tough job, we do long hours, it's great, but working on the community team means we're super lucky to get to work on so many awesome events, and even better, we get to work directly with all of you guys as well, which is well.
Nice job on the leaf.
Thank you very much. That wasn't us. The logo for EVE North you're talking about.
Yeah, the red one.
That's Rick Javix. He did that.
Yeah.
Ah, it's wonderful. Fantastic. So, this year has been particularly challenging, given the craziness of the world tour, but, I mean, it seems to be working out. You guys having fun so far? It's been good, yeah?
Yeah.
Fantastic. But all of this is down to the fact that we work with top-class event organizers, the guys on the EVE North organization team, the guys from EVE London, EVE Down Under, Amsterdam, G-Fleet, who are typically German and incredibly efficient about everything that they do. The Russians, who are usually drunk, but we can work with them. It's all good, because Icelanders are usually drunk as well, so it's fine. But it's really, we can't stress enough the amount of support that we get from both the community and the rest of CCP. And of course, we also work heavily on both the Alliance tournament, and this year, we're taking a hiatus, popular or unpopular, you decide, but we're working on the EVE Invasion World Tour as well, and the Invasion Tournament Series this year. So we've got our hands very full, and CCP Dopamine, I don't know actually how many air miles he's clocked up right now, but he's flying all around the world to host and organize every Invasion Tournament Series feed around that goes into FanFest next year, so it's going to be super crazy. So while we haven't been able to provide as much tournament support as we hoped we could this year, We're looking to hopefully address it going forward and seeing what we can do. But for now, you guys can handle the Eve Invasion tournament series, and hopefully we'll have a great final next year at FanFest. And of course, we get to do fun stuff. That's a real crocodile in that top image. That was terrifying. That was in Sydney last year. But it can be pretty crazy at times, but there's a lot of fun to be had. There's a lot of legwork and a lot of stuff involved when you're doing community work for CCP. But of course, we get to meet some pretty colourful characters along the way, and we have a lot of fun. Over the last 7 years at CCP, I've taken home some pretty random stuff from you guys, including very artistic portraits, 3D printed giant dinosaur heads, and all kinds of stuff I've had to explain to both the TSA and Icelandic customs when I've arrived back in Iceland. So yeah, the more screwed up things you give us, the more embarrassing it gets when we arrive back in Iceland. So yeah, thanks for that. I've had to explain some really weird shit to people who are very angry with why my suitcase is overweight and like this thick. So, but the most important part for us is the feedback loop. So we spend a lot of time dealing with community sentiment reporting. This is both at events and it's also just day to day when we're looking at sort of what's happening on social media. So community sentiment reporting happens around expansions, around releases, around real world events like this. We survey you guys after everything that happens. And obviously in-game events as well, stuff like the Guardians Gala, the Blood Raider event that I can't remember, Crimson Harvest, that's it, that I couldn't remember the name of. So there's a lot that goes on. And we also do conversation monitoring too. So we're looking at trends of conversation, common pain points, hot topics, and we're looking at negativity as well to see what you guys are complaining about, because we want to make sure that you guys all have fun. And a big part of this, obviously, is the CSM. This is a huge part of our feedback loop, and it was great to see a 12% increase in voting this year. Our team manages and coordinates the CSM as part of the player experience team and takes care of the organisation of summits and elections, and it's all down to that gentleman who's very hard working over there who takes care of this. And we're really happy to see the increase in votes this year. It's good to see it's just good to see it on the rise, pretty much. And of course, we're super happy with the lineup this year for CSM 14, and we can't wait to start working with these glorious 10 individuals. No doubt there's going to be a lot of shenanigans given some of the opposition that's going on between these guys, but it's going to be fun, and we're pretty confident we've got a nice mix of people who are going to give us a decent view on what the community loves. And of course, from the community team, we're always available, we're always around, and we always try and maintain as much contact as we can with you guys. This helps us make sure we're able to relay super relevant feedback and makes us just more informed about what you guys are happy with and what you're sad with. And a quick last couple of slides about what we want to do for the rest of 2019. Obviously, after a summer break, we're going to be talking about the second half of the World Tour. So there's going to be more after summer break, more tournaments, more parties, more events. We've got CSM 14. We're going to be working on onboarding new delegates to take care of. Obviously, there's going to be some people who need training wheels on the CSM because they've never done it before. And of course, the Fall Summit coming up. Then we've actually got fresh blood joining the team in a couple of months. We're going to have a third community dev. We're going to have to be onboarding him. And of course, ritual hazing too. So that's going to be really fun. And of course, one thing that we do want to work on, but we don't know when we're going to get to it, we're trying our hardest to finish this up, is a replacement for the fan site program. So we're going to do further work on this. We want to make sure that it's a good replacement for the fan site program. And of course, FanFest 2020. We've got to start planning and prep on that, which is going to be huge, fun and great, and I encourage as many of you as possible to show up. So this pretty much covers a high-level overview of player experience and what we do. As always, we're available to chat whenever you guys see us around, and we always welcome any questions you have, no matter how awkward or unfun they are. We love discussing the good points, the bad points, and everything in between with you guys. So if you want to catch us at the EMEA later today or at the bar for a drink, feel free to come and talk serious spaceship business or have a little bit of fun with us. And of course, we're always around on the forums, on Reddit. I think between us, me and CCP Dopamine are on about 150 individual Discord servers for EVE Online as well. So my phone notifications are just horrific. But we always want to talk to you guys. That's what we're here to do. We're here to engage and interact with you guys. So of course, come and talk to us. We're all going to have a hell of a lot of fun in the last stage here in EVE North. And yeah, that's it from us. And we'll see you around on the floor during the rest of the event.